So, welcome back, and I'm talking to Mike Alfreds. I'm Peter Thompson, and in our last in our last chat, we talked about Mike's experience in America and discovered that you've been, Mike, in you were in America, sort of, or abroad, as it were, for about 10 years, and you decided to come back to England. So just pin down what was the year that you came back, and then tell us about your experience of your first year or two back here.
Came back in 1962,
Right.
and it was just before the huge change into the 60s and swinging London. And I came back with very much the American 50s, where people went to college for security, and it was a very different ethos. So I came back to England, and because I'd done altogether some between 20 and 30 productions, and I had very good reviews, I came back and I got a copy of Spotlight, which had all the contact details of all the rep theatres and so forth in England, and I wrote to all of them and sent them reviews. I sent out, I know, 100, and I got 2 replies. And nothing much happened, and all my enthusiasm, my confidence started to drain away to the point when I became quite bitter and twisted. Odd things would come up. I managed to get an interview as a possible director trainee for BBC television, and I went in front of this big interview panel, and I was very bad at dealing. I had no idea how to deal with them. And still, it was a period of great deference, and you didn't argue. And they were very dismissive. They said, "Oh, well, you're 28, and usually we have people from Oxbridge, who are 21 and 22." And I just felt very put down. There was a snot, and eventually I got odd interviews. I went to the Thorndike Theatre in Leatherhead, which was run at that time by a woman called Hazel Vincent Wallace, who was the sort of doyenne of rep theatres. And she interviewed me. I went into her office and she said, "Oh, you've been in America, have you?" As though I'd brought in a dead rat. "Oh, you've been in America." I thought, I haven't dropped off the moon. I've actually had a fantastic training, and I've done a lot of work, but nothing. And I got deeply depressed. And then I can't quite figure out why or how I did get a job at Canterbury Rep, which doesn't exist anymore, doing an awful play by Peter Ustinov called Photo Finish. It's a 2-week rep. And it was cast already. And I was very naive. I was quite experienced in one way, but now I was not streetwise at all. I wasn't savvy. And I think young people now, much at my age, they would have been much sharper. And I thought, right, I'm going to really do an exciting 2 weeks. And one of the techniques we'd used in America, that when you do a reading of the play, you get everybody to read each other's parts. So I said to the cast, "Okay, I want you to read his part." The revolt. "No, I'm sorry, I've been contracted to play this role. This is the way I learned my lines." So every step I took, I was sort of undercut. And we rehearsed a sort of icy silence. It was just awful. It was 2 weeks of hell. And the leading, and all these people were sort of, then there was a sort of royalty of rep, Bromley rep this was. Oh no, sorry, this wasn't Kent, I beg your pardon, I'm lying. This was Bromley rep. And it was all very grand, And the woman, who was as old as can be when playing a much younger woman, said, all she could talk about, what am I going to wear? And where's the lighting? And it's got to be rose, and there were certain colours, and so that's all she thought about, and being stage centre. And I managed to get through it. And I thought, I don't ever want to work in theatre again. If this is theatre, I want another profession. Really horrible. I mean, partly my fault because I didn't handle the situation. I could have blocked it very nicely and told them where to go, and they'd have been very happy. But, you know, that was me, naive, idealistic, foolish. Anyway, so that was, you know, very depressing. And I'd asked people to come and see the production. It was all right, you know, it was all right. It was a dreadful play, awful play. And then I can't remember how I got a job directing. Oh, I know how it happened. No, I can't remember how I got to it, but I got a chance to teach at a place which was then called the Opera Centre, which was a part of Covent Garden, Royal Opera House. It was in the Commercial Road, way down in the East End, and it was a training for singers. And I taught a bit of acting there, and that was quite nice. And I did a couple of parts of shows. You know, they did sort of, you know, showings with an act of this, an act of that. I did an act of Don Giovanni and another act of a group play called Virginia and Aulis or something like that, which was very static. And through that, I somehow got to work with a very small traveling opera company called Opera Players. And it was run by two very hearty ladies. One of them went rock climbing and mountain climbing in Turkey in her holidays, and she was very jolly. And she was a soprano with a very red face. She was a sweet woman, actually, and with a terrible wobble in her voice. And the other one was a woman called the Honourable Phyllis Thorold, who played the piano. And she had very long arms, so she had to sit miles away from the piano when she played. You know. And of course, I did the Fledermaus with them, and I had some nice singers, and they tried, and I just had a lot of chairs and arches, and it wasn't bad. You know, we did it, and it toured, and it was okay, and it was quite fun, but it wasn't getting me anywhere at all. And then through that, there was a man called, oh God, I've got Norman somebody, who was a sort of tacky opera producer who sent out tours of operas, and he would do a season of 4 plays with 2 directors, and we'd both be working at the same time for a week to rehearse all 4 plays. So I'd do La Boheme from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Traviata from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then the scenery was rented. And it was so humiliating. It was, I mean, you cannot imagine. You know, some of the set looked like a Disney cartoon with I mean, it was horrendous. And the singers were quite good, but there were 1 or 2 that were rather grand. Oh, I'm the main one in this trio. I should be in the center, and so forth and so on. And the tenor for the Traviata didn't show up till the performance, so he was just shoved in. And I traveled around to see the productions to be very dutiful. But it was pretty, and the wonderful thing, because I'd done my work in summer stock, and I was used to getting shows on very quickly there, because then it was almost the same thing. You had a week, but the actors were more skillful. The whole thing was much, you know, much more professional. Being American, it was much crisper. I could manage to move a chorus around quite quickly and get them going. So all the party scenes of Traviata did rather well. I was quite pleased with myself. But it wasn't a thrilling situation. I then got some work doing semi-teaching directing for the Welsh National Opera, which was getting a repertoire.
Mike, I'm just going to interrupt you because it's very interesting that there's this whole side of your career that has partly been about, you know, working with singers, because you still do stuff, don't you? I mean, we'll get to that later, but you work at the ENO, don't you?
It was a total surprise for me because I had never been to an opera. I knew nothing about it. I didn't listen to opera. But when I went to this summer stock in Kennybunkport, which I can elaborate on a little bit, they did a show a week for 11 weeks. The singers all came up from New York. They were very good singers. There was a wonderful choreographer that came up from Boston. She used to suck lollipops. Her name was Virginia Bruce or something, and she was great. So the mornings were spent staging the numbers. I had 3 hours in the afternoon to stage Act 1, stage act 2, put it all together on the third day, dress rehearsed, open, start again. But the energy, and it was by the sea, and it was summer, and it was fun, and the dress rehearsal, you think the show will never, never, never open. And every first night was as smooth as a lake. It was a sort of wonderful professionalism. And of course, the singers had learned all the roles before they came. And so I started off as a stage manager. We did some Offenbach, a wonderful piece called La Pericole, which was really good, very, very funny. And we did L'Arc and we did and so a lot of musicals. And the director, who was a very limp, dreary guy from Pasadena Playhouse in California, had to leave, I don't know quite why, before the end of the season. So I was asked to stay on and do an opera by Nicolai called The Merry Wives of Windsor, based on, that play, and an opera by Cimarosa called The Secret Marriage, which was based on an English Garrick comedy, The Clandestine Marriage, I think. And I did them rather well. And I was asked back the next season, and I did Annie Get Your Gun, Fledermaus again, or before really, Fledermaus, Annie Get Your Gun, Most Happy Fella, which was a wonderful Frank Lesser musical, and so on. Bohème again, and on. And, it was, so I got interested in opera. And I started listening to music and talking to singers, and I thought this was really interesting. So that's how that happened, totally by chance. It was never in my trajectory at all.
Mm. So we're now at the Welsh.
Yeah, Welsh
opera.
Yes, yeah. Welsh National Opera. So there I did some in-house showings of a one-act play called Abu Hassan, by a guy called Weber, which is a little comic piece, and I did a couple of acts of Butterfly. I then did a small tour of Traviata to tour with a small cast, which was very nice, and I did that quite well. But then it sort of that stopped, And then how old was I? By then I was 31, and the guy who was running the company then said to me one day, I think he was a director Monkey, and he said to me, if you haven't made it by 40, you won't make it. And I was full of gloom. I thought, oh God, I'm 31, 32, this is just awful, you see. Mm. So, and I'd lost a lot of confidence, and nothing good seemed to be happening for me. And then life is very interesting. When I'd been in the Air Force in Singapore, and was in my big billet, a new recruit came in a couple of months after me, and his name was Ian Ealswhite, and he had been training at actor at RADA.
You mentioned him in the first. Yeah.
Good. Well, you see, and he told me all these wonderful stories about theatre and meeting this actor and that actor, and it was a very starry group of actors he was working with. Alan Bates was in it and so forth, Albert Finney, I think. And when I came back to England, I sort of made contact with me, and he had been asked to do some class at LAMDA, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, you see, and he couldn't do it, or a friend of his had been asked to do it, and he said, maybe you should go and see them and see if you get the job. Well, I went, I got the job, I did this class, they liked me, and to cut a very long story short, I stayed at LAMDA for 5 years, and I worked fairly steadily for them. I did about 20 odd productions in those 5 years. I shaped and did the whole first year acting training and quite a lot of the second. And it was a very healthy period of recuperation. Now, I was referring back to not understanding certain things about method, about actions and objectives when I left college, that we students had endless debates. What does it mean? When I started teaching, everything was clear to me. In the 3 years I hadn't been working very much, except for these operas and these bits and pieces, the brain, I think, had been time, or the subconscious had had time to absorb and sort out what this Stanislavski process was all about. So when I started teaching, it was absolutely clear to me, utterly clear what was going on. Yeah. And it made me realize that we don't understand things immediately. Intellectually, we can understand them, but it takes time for us to understand them deeply. And I was thinking very much, when you're in rehearsals with actors, their heads are working so much that they can't allow their instinct to take over very much, and there's no time for lateral thinking because you've got to get the show on, you know. So if you've got a problem, you keep digging the same hole deeper. You don't find another way round it. And it occurred to me that the whole principle of the way we rehearsed was anti-creative. That in fact, what you should do is start working on a play, work on it for 3 or 4 weeks, go away and do something totally different, forget about it, come back 3, 4 weeks later and pick it up again. And I was very lucky to be able to do that 2 or 3 times subsequently. And of course, it paid huge dividends. And it taught me that you cannot demand of an actor immediate results. Yes, you can say, go stage left, please, and assume they'll do that, although some actors don't even know their left from their right, but that's beside the point. You know, you can ask an actor to produce an emotion or a result. You can say, explore that, and in their own time, whether it's 2 days or a week or even 10 days, you hope that it will appear some way. So that was just that very painful 3 years of not working actually paid dividends.
Great.
In a strange way. So as horrible as it was, and as how bad it made me feel about myself, it actually was very healthy in that way, that it actually taught me something quite profound.
Mike, would you like to, are you going to talk in detail about your 5 years at LAMDA, or would you like to do that? I mean, is there more for you to say? In which case we could make that into a separate,
Okay.
We'll do that as a separate.
Because again, it was a wonderful education for me.
Yeah.
I learned as much as I taught.
Okay. So listen, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this part of our chat to a close. We're going to look at the work you did at LAMDA as a teacher. And am I right in thinking that LAMDA sort of led almost seamlessly onto the first major seminal company that you set up called Shared Experience?
No.
Okay, I'm wrong. Okay, well, we'll find out.
It was Israel in between.
All right, well, we'll leave it for now and we'll come back to your time in LAMDA. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do. And at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.